Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, June 8th, 2025, and this is show number 1048. If you're listening to this the day it was released, remember tomorrow for WWDC, the NosillaCastaways will be chatting away on Discord during the keynote at podfeet.com/chat. I hope you'll join us. Well, I've been busy for the last week and a half. A week and a half ago Wednesday, I did a talk for the local South Bay Mac users group where I went through about 15 of my Mac tiny tips, kind of the presentation that I did last year at Macstock. You've heard all of this content before, but it was really fun to spread the tips to even more folks. This is a user group I present to pretty often because it's actually in my own neighborhood, and so it was a lot of fun to hang out with people I've known for a long time. But then this most recent Wednesday, I did a talk at the Naples Mac user group run by Sheeta Hunter. Adam Engst introduced me to Sheeta, and since I'd not spoken to her group before, she and I had a pre-meeting where we rolled around ideas that her group might be interested in learning from me. We chose me teaching audio hijack, and that's kind of a harder topic than most Mac user groups are ready for, but she was sure it would be a hit. Now, I've spoken to a lot of user groups, and Sheeta's is ahead of the pack in terms of organization and of a super tightly run ship, like having that pre-meeting with me, for example. She told me to get on at 8:15 a.m., but that the talk would start at 8:30. When I got on the Zoom call at 8:15, there were 50 people already connected. And I don't know how many people joined after that, but by 8:30, I assume there were even more than that. Now, from 8:15 to 8:30, there was collegial chatter back and forth. They asked some fun little questions and people piped up and answered. But about a minute before start time, they had another person who was running the Zoom call, and that person put four of us as spotlights. So that stops any other video from covering us up. So the four of us talked. At about 11 seconds before start time, he said, "Time to start." And at 8:30 on the dot, the thing started. Now, I can tell you stories of how I forced meetings I wasn't even running to start on time when I was working. So this was a huge hit to me. Now, here's the really fun part. People were interested in the topic. There were lots of really smart questions, most of which I could actually answer about audio hijack. Now, Sheeta even has this process tightly controlled. People write a quick question in the chat sidebar, and when a good time comes for her to break into my talk, she would call on a person, unmute them, and let them ask the question. Now, I could tell she has them on a tight leash because there were zero rambling, drawn-out questions. You know where sometimes somebody just really wants to talk, and they pretend they're asking a question, but they tell you their life story? None of the questions like that. Every one of them were as clear and crisp as you could hope for. I think that makes for a better meeting for everybody. Now, NMUG has 42 weekly meetings a year, along with live classes. They've got a message board and a fabulous website. Membership is open to anyone, but there's a $40 per year fee to join. They do not publish the videos of their events except to members because they want to keep this tight membership, and obviously whatever she's doing is working. If you'd like to check out NMUG, you can get a free 30-day trial at naplesmug.com. Heck, if you did sign up for that 30-day free trial, you could watch my talk during that 30 days. I got to tell you, Sheeta is a force to be reckoned with. She's already signed me up to give another talk next year. Now, another funny thing is I told you that it was Adam Engst who introduced me to Sheeta. I mentioned to Bart what a cool user group this was. He goes, "Oh yeah, I've talked to them a bunch of times. In fact, I'm coming up on the agenda pretty soon." So how fun is that she already knew Bart. So I felt like I was part of the family finally. But that wasn't it for my busy week. On Thursday, I had an interesting conversation with the Perkins School for the Blind. This was an odd conversation. It started with Pilot Pete from the Mac Geek Gab was approached by a woman from Perkins School of the Blind asking, did he know anything about accessibility? And I don't think he knows this woman particularly well, but they had a little conversation. He goes, I know who you should have. You should have Allison Sheridan to talk about accessibility. Now, I'm not blind, and I'm not sure why I would be picked for this, but they wanted to talk to me, so I was like, okay. And they didn't want me to present anything. They just wanted me to talk about how I got started in my interest in accessibility and what I've seen change over the years in technology and with Apple and things like that. The group I was talking to was the IT staff, and I'm not sure I added a lot to what they already know, but it was pretty fun talking to them. We do have some future plans for me to chat with their CTO, maybe for chit-chat across the pond, so that should be fun too. I have to say, they didn't start on time though. I was kind of annoyed at that. Anyway, you'll hear more about my busy week in a little bit when we talk about my work doing experiments with Chris Cook and Remote Incident Manager. I'm very excited to tell you about my latest Screencast Online video tutorial because I decided to focus on apps just by Sindre Sorhus. Sindre is a prolific Apple developer. He's got 55 separate apps as of the time I'm recording this. He's added apps just since I created the tutorial. The apps I chose to teach this time for Screencast Online are Dato, Aiko, and the browser picker Velja. I'm actually going to do my next video on more Sindre Sorhus apps because he's got so many of them. Anyway, you may remember me telling you about Velja 3 years ago on the podcast. I'm wild about it, and I've continued to use it. Dato is a menu bar app that gives you quicker access to your calendar in useful ways. I was really surprised at the depth of Dato as I learned it in order to teach it, and now it's my go-to app to get situational awareness and more with my calendar. Aiko is a delightfully simple way to create AI transcriptions of audio files while ensuring that your data never leaves your Mac. The models all run locally, so it's got a great privacy angle. If you'd like to see this most recent video tutorial, remember that you can get a free 7-day trial and watch the current back catalog of all Screencasts Online has to offer. If you like to learn, Screencasts Online is for you. I'm with Elizabeth Evans at the Maggie Vision booth, and I'm holding in my hand what looks like a VR headset. It's actually pretty light, but the odd thing is it appears to have an iPhone in it.
That's correct. It is the only wearable out there that uses the iPhone 16 Pro. It is a wearable video magnifier for people with low vision. It goes up to 20 times magnification, and it has 100 degrees field of view.
So it looks like if it's using the iPhone's cameras, how is it going to be what was the magnification you said, 20x?
20x, that's correct.
So how is it doing that if it's only a 5x camera on the iPhone 16 Pro?
We have an app in there. It's a free app on the App Store that has it utilize the cameras in there.
So there's no optical magnification added to the headset?
There is some optical magnification as well added to the headset.
Okay, that makes more sense. So are you going to have me put this on and you're going to drive the microphone, right?
That's correct.
All right. Why don't you describe what's going on as I put it on?
I'm going to have you put that on, and then you're going to be able to use...
My glasses off?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And on your right-hand side, you're going to find the plus and minus magnification right up front. There you go, and you can zoom in.
Okay, I'm seeing the...
We'll launch the app. There we go.
All right, make sure you pass the microphone to me if I'm looking at it. I'm seeing red stuff. Oh, holy cow. I am really looking zoomed up. This is... Okay, I'm looking like your individual teeth, Steve. All right. This is disconcerting, but definitely is 20x. If I hold still, it's pretty amazing. So it looks like, are these focus wheels on either side?
They are focus wheels for each individual eye and essential PD as well.
What does PD mean?
Pupillary distance, so that they can get their pupillary distance for the eyes.
Okay, so that's in the top center here. And then I see kind of a button lever thing. Is this to extract your phone out of the case?
That's actually the lock button to put it to sleep. And then on the bottom is the action button to be able to launch the app. And then you can extract the phone out so that it's the only one that allows you to use the phone as the actual phone. So it's an unlocked iPhone, so you can use the phone as your actual phone as well.
That's fascinating. So is this out on the market yet?
It is on the market. We've been out since August.
And what's the price point on this?
$3,500 for the complete set, or $2,500 for just the headset.
All right, let's see if Steve can stick. Can you look inside? Let's see. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Wow, he's looking through the inside of it. This is really interesting. So you said $3,500?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, and is there any kind of subscription service, or that's it?
That's it.
All right, where would people go to find Maggie Vision?
It's Maggie.vision.
Very good. And who's Maggie?
Maggie is for magnifier. I'm Elizabeth.
There you go. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, you heard me express a lot of excitement about Maggie Vision, and it was really cool. It was a very interesting product. But there was one thing that kind of gave me a hitch in my giddy up, and that was the price. Not counting the iPhone, it would be $1,500, she said. And it didn't do that much. You know, it did have the thing for the pupillary distance for the extra lens that would, the multiplier basically, that gave you the 20x line of vision. But that's pretty much all it did. You know, I mean, it was a headset that in manufacturing, that should not have been that kind of price. And I talked on the Double Tap podcast I told you about that a little bit, and they refer to that syndrome of being too expensive for what it is as kind of the blind tax. It's a common thing where I guess they don't have a lot of sales because there's not many people who would end up using that product. And so they end up charging an awful lot. And I don't know, that just kind of bothered me. It was very cool. It did what it said on the tin, but $1,500, you're half the price of a Vision Pro, and it was no Vision Pro, that's for sure. So I'm not quite sure it was worth that. But I don't know, still an interesting product. Maybe when they get it into more mass production, they can lower that price. I mentioned recently that one of the reasons I like to play with my devices so much and new software is so that when I'm faced with a technical challenge, I have, kind of like the Lego bricks necessary to piece together a solution. This week, I got to exercise those skills in an interesting way. Let's start with the problem to be solved. You may remember when Chris Cook from Unmute Presents came on the NosillaCast to talk about how, as a blind person, she uses the Aira service to navigate the physical world. If you don't remember or you missed that episode, let me just say she is delightful, intelligent, and funny. I love Chris. She's just awesome. The great news is that Chris has been selected to be one of the speakers at Macstock this year. She'll be explaining how she uses the Remote Incident Manager from Numa Solutions. This product allows blind people to provide remote technical support to both blind and sighted people. Chris is an instructor, and she uses the Remote Incident Manager regularly to help her teach her students. We've been putting our heads together to come up with a way for her to demonstrate how this works to the Macstock audience. Since the Remote Incident Manager relies on the internet, it would be folly for her to try to do a live demo on stage. I mean, as fun as that might be, it'd probably fail. Conference Wi-Fi is notoriously unreliable, and to demonstrate this tool effectively, there's some interesting audio routing required. We've been working on a way for me to make a video and audio recording of her controlling my Mac, and then we'll play the canned video at Macstock. It's turning out to be an exercise that requires every bit of my expertise in every tool for audio and video I've ever used. Now, the Remote Incident Manager was only ported from Windows to Mac OS 2 years ago, and from my understanding, it's the only tool out there that will allow a blind person to provide remote tech support. I remember when NosillaCastaway Dan Eckmeyer told me the good news that it was now available for the Mac. It was originally only on Windows. Both the remote technician, Chris, and the person requiring help, me, have to install the Remote Incident Manager on their computers. The target computer, though, does not have to have VoiceOver on it because a sighted person would not have a VoiceOver running, I should say. Now, on my side, the installer for the Remote Incident Manager walked me through the plethora of permissions Apple requires for our security. It wasn't fundamentally different from any other app that requires screen recording permissions, but the UI of the Remote Incident Manager will appear very non-standard to Mac users. The screens are white with black text and boxes around some things representing buttons. The screen that explains permissions are solid red with black text. So, it doesn't look anything like what you're used to seeing. But it's all directing you to, go over to system settings, accessibility, blah, 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 do all that permission stuff. Now, in addition to the security permissions, the Remote Incident Manager installer also installed the Carabiner Virtual Human Interface Device Manager driver extension. I'd heard of Carabiner before, but I had to look it up to find out exactly what it is. Carabiner Elements is a keyboard customizer for macOS that allows the user to remap keys. Carabiner Elements employs a virtual keyboard and mouse driver to modify input events. And on my system, it's .carabiner-virtual HIDD device-manager.app, and it's responsible for activating and managing these virtual devices. Okay, then. Not sure why it needs this to be installed for the Remote Incident Manager, but I decided to play along. Now, the instructor and the student see the same interface when launching the Remote Incident Manager. It's a very simple white window with black text with these plain rectangular boxes around anything that's a button. It kind of looks like an engineer designed a user interface instead of a designer with, actual talent. The title of this window says, Receive Remote Help. But Chris will push the button that says, Provide Help instead. Her paid account allows her to define a keyword, which she then tells the person she's helping. On my screen, I simply enter the keyword Chris provides me into this little box in the window, and I push connect, and then in a second or two, Chris is able to completely control my computer using VoiceOver. Now, if you're sighted and controlling someone else's computer, you see everything on their screen and you can move your cursor around, you can click on things and see those things change. With the remote incident manager, it's exactly like that, except Chris is navigating my computer, like I said, using VoiceOver. She can issue commands, she can open applications, she can modify settings, all while listening to VoiceOver that's coming from my computer. And she's using VoiceOver commands that are talking to my computer to navigate the system. For her, it's just like she's navigating her own computer. When she first connects to my computer, I see the little gray box in the bottom left that displays what VoiceOver is saying. Now, because of a recent change in macOS Sequoia, if I want to hear VoiceOver, I have to toggle it off and back on again. This behavior has been reported to Apple by Numa Solutions, but they've yet to catch anyone's attention about it. Now, Chris, when initiating the connection, can choose to simply control my screen, or she can choose to have our voices transmitted within this same screen control session. Now, at this point, we're ready for Chris to perform some task on my computer that would be interesting for the user of Macstock to watch. But now comes the tricky part. We have to figure out how to record everything for the video. Our goal is to create a recording that includes Chris's voice, Allison's voice, VoiceOver from my Mac, because that's what she hears when running Remote Incident Manager. We want video of my desktop as she's controlling it, and not only what she's controlling here, but the visual element of VoiceOver, what VoiceOver is showing on screen. It's kind of odd that there is a visual element, but it really helps if you're sighted to be able to know what it's doing without maybe having to listen to it. Now, that sounds simple. That's just the kind of thing Allison does all the time, but it turned out to be much more complicated than we thought it would be. With some fancy dancing with tools like Loopback and Audio Hijack from Rogue Amoeba, I can capture the audio of me, Chris, and VoiceOver on my Mac, and I can have those three sources be included in a ScreenFlow recording of my screen while we're doing the session. Unfortunately, in 3 separate sessions over the course of many days and many hours of experimentation, we've discovered a big problem. If any software is running on my Mac that can capture the audio, Chris hears her voice reflected back to her with a 3 to 5 second delay. You can imagine how it would be impossible for her to conduct the demo under these conditions. I shouldn't say recording any audio. It's if I'm capturing the audio of our voices. If I'm just trying to capture VoiceOver, it's not a problem. Now, I tried recording our voices with Audio Hijack. I tried it with ScreenFlow. I tried it with QuickTime, and the result was the same, this double audio with a delay. We abandoned the voice call option in the Remote Incident Manager and tried using Zoom for our voices, where I would then record it, but the same double delay was experienced on Chris's end as soon as I started to record. We did a screen share with Zoom where I was able to check her sound input and output settings and system settings. I was able to check her loopback settings, but I was unable to account for this problem. And of course, I checked all of my own settings over and over and over again, trying to figure out what was wrong. Now, Chris told me that she normally just calls her student on the phone and then uses the Remote Incident Manager on the Mac for the screen share. So we decided let's give that a try. The lag was gone, and Chris was able to easily navigate around on my machine using VoiceOver, hear it speaking near real time, and that would work okay, but now we have a phone call instead of a VoIP call. How do I capture her audio to put it into the video? Well, this next section is entitled 1 iPhone, 3 microphones, 3 sets of headphones, and 3 Macs. In order to get this to work, that's what we had to do. My MacBook Pro will be the target device for Chris to control using the Remote Incident Manager. As a side note, I have a large display connected to the MacBook Pro, but when Chris is controlling my Mac, she hasn't any way of knowing which of my displays she's using. She said, I've never tried to help somebody who had an external display. That simply never happens for me. Because why would a blind person have an external display, right? Anyway, that would make it hard to record as she's jumping back and forth between my MacBook Pro and the external display. So I put my MacBook Pro in screen mirroring mode. So now I see the same thing on both screens. So wherever she is, it's the one thing I'm recording. Now, since my MacBook Pro is the target, that is where I'm going to run ScreenFlow. And I can record the video of the screen and the audio from VoiceOver. And that works okay. She doesn't get the double audio. Now, in order to capture our voices, we need to have a VoIP tool, like Zoom. If I run Zoom on my MacBook Air, not my MacBook Pro, and she uses an iPhone to call into Zoom, then we've removed whatever's causing that double delay for Chris. With Zoom running on my MacBook Air, I can run Audio Hijack and capture a stereo audio file with her iPhone audio on one track and the audio from my ATR 2100 USB-C microphone on the other track. Now, Chris also has an ATR 2100X, and we figured out that she can use it as a microphone for her iPhone, so her fabulous voice will sound good on the recording. Now, when you use the ATR 2100X USB-C microphone on an iPhone, you also have to connect headphones to the monitor port on the microphone in order to hear the conversation. You have no control over sending the audio out to anything else. She can't even put it in speakerphone on the iPhone if that microphone is plugged in. The audio only comes out of the headphone jack. No big deal. Chris has high-quality headphones. But now, if she has her headphones on listening to me on the Zoom call, how is she going to hear voiceover on her Mac in the remote incident manager? Well, Chris came up with a brilliant solution. She has 2 sets of headphones that each cover only one ear. So she's going to be able to listen to the Zoom call in one ear while hearing voiceover from the Mac in the other ear. I told her we could only do this if she promises to take a photo of herself to wearing 2 sets of headphones, because that's going to be hilarious, and she immediately agreed. I told you she's fun. All right, back to the setup. My plan was to hit record on Audio Hijack on the MacBook Air and then record on ScreenFlow on the MacBook Pro and later combine the recordings. Now that introduced a problem of how do I align the audio tracks from Chris and me chatting on the MacBook Air with the audio voiceover and the video on the MacBook Pro. That's where the second microphone comes in. I connected my HiLPR40 mic to the MacBook Pro, and I added that input as a second audio track for the video in ScreenFlow. The HiL voice recording will simply be a reference track. When I bring the stereo recording of Chris and me from the Zoom call into the ScreenFlow recording, the HiL recording will make it easy for me to line the audio tracks up. Then I can either delete the HiL or the ATR 2100 voice recording of me. I was kind of proud of that solution. Now, Chris and I ran through a quick example demo with the setup I just described, and I was able to capture Chris and me, voiceover, and the screen as she controlled my Mac. I lined the voice track using that reference audio track and then muted the reference track. I felt like we had made fire when we were done. Now, I immediately sketched out how we configured everything using a pencil and paper because I wasn't sure I could ever reproduce it, and then I made one of my world-famous diagrams using draw.io. Now, I'm not missing the irony of using a diagram to explain what we're doing when the folks at Numa Solutions are blind, so they'll never be able to appreciate our genius without this written explanation. But of course, we have the full written explanation. Now, in my diagram, I was careful to use not just color to differentiate the different lines of the audio flow and the video flow. I used dotted and dashed and solid lines, so everything is pretty easy to follow, whether you can see color or not. Now, the bottom line is that while it was frustrating at times, Chris and I had a blast working on this puzzle together. I suspect you'll hear more of this story as time goes on. We're going to try to do the final recording this week. I fully expect and hope that the NosillaCastaways will step forward with better solutions that start with, well, actually, Allison, it's quite simple. All you have to do is... Well, a lot of the cool kids have been sending me photos of their cool new NosillaCast 20th anniversary shirts. I've been a big fan of the vintage shirts for their softness, but they convinced me to give the regular 100% cotton shirts a try. I bought the red one for myself, and it is brilliant. The colors really pop on the red, and the shirt is just as soft as the vintage one. If you'd like to be one of the cool kids by showing your joy about the show to the world, you can get a t-shirt, a mug, or other glassware, or a tote bag, all announcing 20 years of podcasting. Simply go to podfeed.com/shop. And yes, I understand the danger of wearing a red shirt. Well, it's that time of the week again. It is time for Security Bits with Bart Busschots, and I'm very excited, especially about the first topic this week, Bart.
Well, me too. And it gives me another excuse to say how much I love how wonderfully well yourself and Adam are giving new life to a segment I still feel like a sort of a granddaddy of or something. You know, chit-chat across the pond is kind of my idea as an excuse to talk to you.
Oh, 100. I hope you don't feel ousted.
Oh, no. I love the fact that yourself and Adam are having these amazing conversations. I think it's so cool.
Good. And we still have all of our segments together, so everybody's happy.
Exactly. Actually, we've no feedback or follow-up, so we can jump straight into our deep dive, which I've called some VPN nuance, because in the chit-chat across the pond, which was included in the last NosillaCast and as the most recent standalone chit-chat across the pond, I forgot to check the number.
I can come up with it while we're chatting.
Well-
Keep going. I'll just throw out a number all of a sudden.
Well, I was going to say, it's linked in the show notes, which is kind of the most important thing. But you guys had a very good discussion on deep linking, which is just so useful. I don't know when I discovered that, but actually it was probably Adam who posted it on Tidbits is probably when I discovered it. So a few weeks before you guys recorded, probably. But it's a great feature.
That deep linking is fantastic. It just, it's life-changing. It was number 814.
Excellent. Well, you also then had a discussion on VPNs, and I don't actually disagree with you. I have a minor quibble with something Adam said, but it's a quibble, and we'll quibble it at the end. But there were two things.
Well, I think throughout it, I kept saying, I just feel like I'm missing something here. Like I don't have something in my arsenal to respond appropriately here. And I was assuming somebody would correct me, and it's even more fun if you're there to just bring some sanity to it.
I hope so. There were two little threads you guys left dangling because neither of you were quite sure enough to be assertive, which is better, right? If you're not sure, don't tell the listeners a porky pie. Just sort of leave it and hope a listener
This is what I think I know.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to pick up those two loose threads, and then I'm going to have a little quibble with Adam about the importance of protecting your DNS, because Adam is half right, but missing a piece, and that piece is, in my opinion, important. But I noticed you guys struggling a little to have the discussion because you didn't quite go deep enough into how it really works, which meant that you were talking in abstractions or analogies. And those analogies are really useful, but they're limited. They're not an exact analogy of what's really happening. And so when you get to the edge cases, the analogy breaks down, and you guys didn't dig deeper, which meant you couldn't answer some of the questions very convincingly. So I'm going to do what I do. And I'm going to pour in a whole bunch of context, and you're going to be, why are you telling me this? And then I'm going to pull it all back, and then hopefully you go, oh, look, it's tied up in a neat little package. Fingers crossed.
Can you give us any kind of a level set of what it was we did say? Or
Okay,
will that
yeah,
come out
sure.
in the discussion?
Well, no, I can tell you now. So the two things were you had some queries about what iCloud Private Relay doesn't do. That's really easy to address. We get to that at the end. That's a nice, easy one.
Okay.
That's a paragraph. And the other question, to which the answer is, it's complicated, but it's very interesting, is, are you on the LAN or not? When you connect to a VPN, are you on the LAN or not?
Right. So that was the end when I was talking about being in a coffee shop and saying you don't want to be on the LAN where you can get an adversary in the middle attack.
Yeah.
And then we got into, are you on the LAN?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's the complicated one, but it's good reason to dive in. So
And LAN being local area network, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yes. And I'm going to do another little acronym thing while we're here, because there has been a change in terminology. And I don't know if people have noticed that the new term you see a lot is AITM. It's all over the place now. And I don't know if we ever explicitly connected the dots between that new term and an older term we've used for a long time called MITM, or man in the middle. They are not different. They are an updated version of each other. So man in the middle is the old phraseology that is falling out of use, and adversary in the middle, or AITM, is the new term. And the reasons for the change is twofold. In 2025, the adversary is more likely to be an automation or an AI than a human. And why do we need to throw a gendered term in there when it probably isn't human at all? The actual term is probably it. So how about adversary, right? Whether it's a human intelligence or some other intelligence, if it's against you, that's the bit that matters. So AITM.
And why couldn't women be doing awful things being adversaries too? So
yeah, true. Although in cryptography, it's always poor Alice and Bob. But anyway, don't know why that. All right, that's a whole other thing. So
All right.
all of this lives on our modern networks, which are all TCP/IP networks. And the TCP/IP network is one of the most amazing things I learned about in my computer science degree because it is just genius. And the thing has stood the test of time since the 70s. Like 1970s, we're still using it today. The only thing that's changed is it's a million times faster.
You said all of this lives on TCP. What do you mean by all of this? You're talking
Everything
about
VPN.
the VPNs?
Yes, absolutely. Everything we do, everything
Okay.
involving the LAN or the internet is TCP/IP networking. It is how our whole planet hangs together. It's amazing because it's 70s. And it's such a big problem. They didn't try to solve it all at once. They broke it into pieces, 4 layers, and each layer solves a different subset of the problem. And the only way the layers communicate is that they only talk to their direct neighbors, and the layer below you offers you services that you don't have any idea how it's done. All you know is I can ask the layer below me to do this. And you offer services to the layer above you. And all the communication just happens in that way, with each layer offering features to the layer above and depending on the layer below. And so everything is broken down into those 4 layers, including VPNs. So layer 1 is at the very, very bottom, and it is only it's a real electronic engineer layer. It is worried about getting one single packet. Oh, I've left out a sentence. The genius idea from the 70s was that instead of trying to send a whole bunch of data as one big stream, you break it into little pieces, and each piece lives by itself. You break it apart, you shove it into the network, and then you put it all back together on the other end, which is why they're called packet-switched networks. Each packet is independent, which is mind-blowing that that's how it works. When you send like a 1 gig file, it's a few million packets, gets broken apart, they all go across the internet. Half of them could go a different way than the other. One of them could go across the Pacific and some of them across the Atlantic if it's going from me to you, right? And it'll all just get reassembled in your computer and it's like, oh yeah, there's the file, Bart. Thanks very much. It's magic.
Okay.
So the first layer in solving that problem is really straightforward. Get one packet from one device connected to the same physical network to another device on that physical network. That's it. That's the only thing layer 1 tries to do, which means that there are 2 important things from our point of view. Layer 1 for us is Ethernet. That is what layer 1 is. It's Ethernet, which means on layer 1, the only addresses involved are MAC addresses. Your packet goes from one MAC address on your LAN to another MAC address on your LAN, and we have 2 implementations of Ethernet. Little copper cables we call wired Ethernet and Wi-Fi. They are both Ethernet. Layer 1.
Right.
Layer 2 then is responsible for getting one packet from any computer connected to anyone's LAN to anywhere else on the internet. So one single packet still, but now you're not just getting it within your network, you're getting it to jump from network to network to network to get from me to you, say, other side of the world here. And the way you jump from network to network is through routers. So routers connect 2 networks together, and the packet goes from my router to another router to another router to another router, bing, 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 and eventually it arrives at your router and pops onto your LAN and onto your Mac. And that's quite a job of work, figuring out how to do that. So that is the magic of layer 2. And at layer 2, the protocol that does all the work is IP, i.e. IPv4 or IPv6. So IP addresses are how IP packets are addressed. The packet goes from one IP address to another IP address, and they could be anywhere on the planet.
So let me make sure I follow this. So you said that layer 1 was getting individual packets from one directly connected device to another.
Mm-hmm.
But then layer 2 is getting individual packets from one internet connected device to another internet connected device. What does mean directly? Layer 1, what is directly connected?
Your LAN. So layer 1 only goes as far as your router. And then it's not layer 1 anymore. It goes up to layer 2. Now, your router has another layer 1 connection to your ISP. So it goes up to layer 2, your router decides what to do with it, back down to layer 1 to go to your ISP, comes back up to layer 2, another router decides, do I go left to go across the Atlantic or right to go to Amsterdam?
Okay.
Back down to layer 1, pops up at the next router, left or right.
Okay, I hope you don't mind. I added in parentheses on your LAN right after
perfect.
one directly connected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm caught up. Okay. All right. So now we've got things flying across the internet. Still individual packets, though.
There we go. So layer 3's job is to put some sanity on this individual packets thing. So at layer 3, we are dealing with data streams. So you have a stream of data goes in on one side, and that same stream is supposed to come out the other side. And we have 2 protocols here that you will probably recognize. The Transmission Control Protocol, or TCP, or the User Datagram Protocol, or UDP. So TCP and UDP. And at layer 3, the little packets have an extra piece of addressing. It is IP address plus port number. So at layer 2, it's IP addresses. At layer 3, address port numbers come into play. So MAC addresses on layer 1, IP addresses on layer 2, IP plus port number is layer 3. And then layer 4 is where the applications live. It's called the application layer. And so that is everything that you think of happening over TCP/IP. So some of it is low-level network stuff. DNS is a layer 4 protocol for translating IP addresses into pretty names that we humans can remember. NTP, the Network Time Protocol, is a layer 4 protocol for synchronizing clocks. And then the other stuff that lives in layer 4 is the apps you and I care about. So email is layer 4, SMTP, POP, IMAP. The web is layer 4, so that is HTTP. File sharing and stuff is layer 4, so your SSHs, all the proprietary stuff, that's all layer 4. Instant messaging apps, they're all layer 4. So all that stuff is layer 4 up in the application layer.
Okay.
So that's your normal network. So now someone came along and went, I want to make a VPN. I want to make it so that we can pretend that there's a private cable between these 2 computers in different parts of the world that I can send data through so that no one can spy on it. And the way it's done is by using a layer 4 protocol like WireGuard or OpenVPN. And on the 2 ends, you have an app. And that app creates a virtual network card. So this is like in Loopback, we can make virtual audio devices which are connected to a piece of software. So where a real mic is connected, a real audio input port is connected to a microphone, which is magnets and wires and things. And a Loopback one is connected to some software. Do the same thing for a network port. So a new network device appears in your Mac or your Windows machine or your iPhone. It has a name as if it was a physical network card you'd installed, but there's no copper wire, there's no antenna. It goes to the app. And then the app encrypts whatever data is sent in that layer 2 hole, that pretend network port, encrypts the data, and then it sends it over your real network using the layer 4 WireGuard protocol or the layer 4 OpenVPN protocol.
Okay, head spinning a little bit by now, Bart. That was a lot of up and down the layers for me to follow.
That is the key point.
I don't have a specific question,
Okay.
but I don't follow it.
Well, no, ask.
Say it again.
Okay.
No, but I don't have a specific question. I just got tangled up in the up and down in the layer 2, layer 4.
Okay, so you
stuff.
have an app at each end. That app is
Right.
the brains of the operation. And the app is connected to the internet on both sides. So they can talk to each other over a layer 4...
What app?
The VPN app. So let's pick one. Let's say you have NordVPN installed. You have a piece of software running on your Mac called NordVPN. They have a matching piece of software running on the NordVPN server called Nord server or whatever the heck they called it, right?
I didn't know an app was running at the other end.
Yeah, because it has to be listening on a port, remember?
Okay.
So yes is the answer. You have software talking to software.
Okay.
Because it's layer 4.
So I'm with you so far. So
Okay.
I've got a layer 4 app on each end.
So they
Then what?
are going to talk to each other over layer 4, and what they're going to send over and back is encrypted data, which is not different to what Signal does. right? It's you take some data, you encrypt it, and you send it over and back. But they don't
Okay.
want it to be text you type, right? That's not the job they're trying to solve. They don't want to encrypt something you type in a text window. They want to encrypt network traffic. So how do they get the network traffic? They lie and they make a pretend network card and say, any traffic that goes into that pretend network card, we are going to encrypt and then transmit as a bunch of effectively data, as if it was a file. And then on the other end, we're going to decrypt it and shove it back down to layer 2 out of another pretend network card. And then it can carry on along the internet as if it was any other network connection. So they're simulating a network connection in software and sending the data over your real network connection.
Okay, so layer 2 again is one internet connected device to any other internet connected device.
Yeah.
Without the VPN, it's using my regular network card. I'm already got one internet connected device to another internet connected device.
But you don't have encryption. The data flowing would be going straight from where you were to where you wanted to go without any protections. A VPN gets it from here to there, but instead of going straight through the public internet, it goes up into the app, encrypts the bejesus out of it, sends it not to its final destination, but to the VPN server, decrypts it, and then lets it back on the internet as if it had come from there. It teleports the network connection.
Okay. All right. I think I'm with it so far.
Right. So the key point is the data is still traveling across your physical LAN. It's just wrapped in a layer of encryption. So at a very fundamental level, are you still on the LAN? Yes.
Wait, back up. You just used the proof to say the proof. How am I still on the physical LAN?
Okay, the VPN is using a network connection from your computer to the VPN server to send data across the internet.
Yes.
There is only one physical connection between you and the internet. That is your LAN. If you were not on your LAN, how would the app send the data?
Okay, but it's not encrypted when it's traveling across my LAN.
It doesn't know what it's sending, right? A TCP packet is a bunch of glop. That glop represents the same data you would have sent without encryption, only it's now...
But it's encrypted.
It's now encrypted. It's now wrapped in a layer of encryption.
So that tunnel is happening inside my LAN, right?
You're right. So at layer 4, it's encrypted. But underneath, it is traveling as layer 2 packets.
Which are encrypted.
The data in them is encrypted, but the packets are still plain old layer 2 packets. So at a layer...
It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't follow the difference between the two.
Layer 2 doesn't understand what it's moving around. It is... Take this tiny piece of information, which you have no idea what the big picture is. This could be half of an image. It could be the word hello. It could be anything, right? Layer 2 does not understand that it is moving something that belongs to a jigsaw puzzle that's a big picture. It's a tiny thing, and it makes its way entirely independently from one computer to another. It doesn't understand anything above.
Okay. Doesn't answer my question. Aren't those packets encrypted? It can't get it without it being through this VPN software.
That is
on both
correct.
Ends.
But at layer
So
2, it is no different to any other packet because no packet makes any sense at layer 2. So at the layer 2 level, it is IP packets moving around. So you are on the LAN. They are moving over your LAN. If you weren't on your LAN, how could they travel?
It's essentially like saying you are on the internet.
Right.
You're on the LAN, you're on the internet, because the two things can't be connected to each other without the LAN existing.
Yeah.
And the internet existing.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the LAN, what I meant when I was saying it was visible, unencrypted, just flowing around where everybody can see it who's on the same LAN. Like Steve can see Steve's machine can see what's going on my machine on the LAN right now. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
if it was encrypted on the LAN.
He can see those packets, right? He won't be able to decrypt them, but he can see them. And he can even see that they're WireGuard packets or OpenVPN packets. He can see the source destination is your IP address. The port number is some port on your computer. He can see the destination is the NordVPN server at some random port. He can see its IP address. He is seeing those packets move. He just can't reassemble them into something meaningful. But each individual packet, he knows you are connected over WireGuard to NordVPN in our hypothetical example. I literally don't know what I can't remember what VPN you bought.
They're usually WireGuard or OpenVPN, so it doesn't matter. So it sounds like by definition, the LAN things on the LAN have certain knowledge that are independent of the encrypted information that you're sending.
Yes. And this becomes important because at layer 1, this isn't all that important because someone can know that you are using a VPN. So that's a tiny piece of information. So corporate policy could say, sorry, no VPNs, and all WireGuard packets could be blocked at the router. Your ISP could decide, oh, sorry, no VPNs. The government of China could decide, I'm sorry, no VPNs cross the Great Firewall of China. Right? So there is a tiny bit of information leaking, but that's not the reason I think it's very important to say that you're still on the LAN. Because the problem is at layer 1. The problem is Ethernet. Ethernet goes back to the 1970s. That means that Ethernet doesn't have any security. So when you are connected to a VPN, you are still on the network at layer 1. So all layer 1 shenanigans are still available to happen. So when there's a bug in Windows, that Windows has a remote code execution bug in its implementation of an Ethernet driver, you're still vulnerable. And there's a whole bunch of trickery that you can play at layer 1 that you're absolutely not protected from when you're on a VPN. There's another thing happening here. So let's leave layer 1, you just can't protect yourself from. Nothing can. Not even a VPN. What will happen is that if you are using HTTPS or if you're using a good VPN app, if someone messes with your layer 1, you will get a certificate error. So if you are the kind of human being who, if the web page gives you a certificate error, says no, you're okay. If you're the kind of person who a NordVPN gives you a certificate error, says no, you're okay. But if you open a VPN app, run it, the VPN app gives you a certificate error, and you go, oh, okay. All bets are off because someone on the LAN has successfully attacked you. You clicked OK.
Oh! You didn't say that part. So you're saying, how did I get the certificate error in the first place?
Because at layer 1, someone messed with you. And one of the things you can do at layer 1 is you can effectively steal people's traffic. And all traffic that should go to the router to go to the internet goes to the baddie and then to the router to the internet. You can man in the middle people on layer 1.
Adversary in the middle.
Don't! Having so carefully laid it out at the start of the segment, I went in, yes. MITM. Mit'em.
Okay, so
you're still
not safe at all?
No. As long as you don't accept the certificate error, you are safe, right? If the certificates match, you're fine. So if you don't get a certificate warning, you are fine. But
you would always get a certificate error if someone somehow captures my layer 1 traffic, which I didn't follow how they did it, but they got to it, and I try to go to Google and they send me to something that looks like Google, but it's what causes a certificate error in that case?
So they're sending you to something that looks like Google, but only real Google has Google's private key. So fake Google can't do HTTPS or WireGuard or anything that involves encryption because private key is the only way to match the known public key. That's the whole point of public key cryptography. That's how HTTPS works.
So they can't have a site with a certificate that makes it HTTPS, has a public-private key, and make it look like Google?
Correct, because only Google can get a certificate for Google.com. You can't get a certificate for BartB.ie. You can only get one for Podfeet.com because you have to prove domain ownership.
So we aren't talking about Google spelled with 3 O's. We're talking about Google.com.
Bing,
That's
bing, bing.
Okay.
There's another point where the middle position gives the attacker power. Right? Because if you don't notice the typo, right, you're still in trouble.
AITM, by the way.
I know I did it again. Oh. Right, so you can't hide layer 1. So you're on the LAN. So if there's a naughty person on the LAN, they can mess with you at layer 1. Depending on the configuration of your VPN client, they may also be able to see you at layer 4. Because your VPN app and the VPN app running on the VPN server are talking to each other over a TCP IP connection on some port number, right? Port 1 to port 2 over WireGuard. So there is a non-zero amount of layer 4 traffic. Otherwise, your VPN traffic couldn't be passing by. So how is it that it's sometimes possible when you turn on a VPN app to appear as if you disappear from the network? And I'm using the phrase appear as if because the answer is you're not really gone. There's 2 things happening. So your computer, when it has more than one network card, has to decide, does this packet go to network card number 1 or to network card number 2? I have one packet, I'm sending it onto the network, I have 2 networks, do I go A or B? That's called routing. And your computer is a router. And if you have Wi-Fi and Ethernet, you need to tell your Mac which one gets priority. And you do that by dragging them around in your network settings. When you have a VPN, there's a third option. And so there's a rule that the VPN app tells your OS, every packet that matches this rule, you send it into the VPN. And that rule has to have an exception for WireGuard or OpenVPN, because otherwise you have an infinite loop where it's sending it to itself. Right? It's like looking into a mirror, pointing at a mirror. So there is definitely a rule that lets some traffic through. Now, you can use VPN technology to solve lots of different problems. And the different toggle buttons in your VPN setting will determine how the packet goes into, do I go straight to the LAN unencrypted, or do I go through the pretend VPN tunnel and go out through WireGuard? Right? So if you have a toggle in your VPN app for can access LAN, or can use local printers, or can connect to local file shares, you have these kind of toggles with different phraseology. That is telling your computer whether or not to let layer 4 traffic onto the LAN or not. If that toggle is one way, you do not even appear to vanish from the LAN. You stay completely on the LAN. You can use your Apple TV. You can use your printer if your printer feels like printing today, which it probably doesn't. You can access your Drobo. You're still on the LAN, right? But everything you try to send through the internet will be sent through the WireGuard tunnel. So you're still hiding from your ISP, but you're not hiding from your LAN. But maybe your VPN app has a toggle that says turn off LAN. Well, now the routing algorithm is saying to go this way, which means that traffic coming from you goes through WireGuard. But that doesn't stop someone else on your network talking to your shared iTunes library unless the VPN app also adjusts your local firewall inside your Mac or your Windows machine, because they all have a firewall too. So if they also turn on your firewall to say don't let the LAN in, then you appear to vanish fully at layer 4. But you're still there for layer 1 faffing about.
Okay. Well, it was suggested to me that it was insecure to use a VPN with local LAN access.
I wouldn't know. But no, what's the problem to be solved?
I need to be able to print, and I need to be able to securely talk over the internet.
Then that's not insecure. That's what you want, right? So the way I look at it is, what's the problem to be solved? Very NosillaCasts, right? So I'm at home, but I don't trust my ISP. Well, in that case, the LAN is trustworthy, the internet is untrustworthy. What I want my VPN to do for a secure connection is let me talk to my LAN, so so in my own house, I'm by myself, right? I can do my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm going to the internet, encrypt me. So then the right answer is to allow LAN access. But if I'm in a coffee shop with a whole bunch of naughty people, or if I'm at the one of those security conferences where they're always trying to hack each other,
DEF CON. Right?
Oh Jesus! But then that LAN is hostile. So then the toggle should be the other way.
Okay. Okay, so it all depends on where you are and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and the other one is, right, maybe you don't even want to encrypt internet traffic. If you work for an organization, maybe the only traffic that should go to the VPN is traffic going to your corporate network. Maybe your corporation doesn't want your Google browsing going all the way back to the corporate network and then out to the internet. Because maybe the corporate traffic only wants you to talk to the corporate stuff and to do everything else on your own bloody internet, please. Then the right configuration...
Can they do that?
Yeah. Now, that won't work with
neat.
NordVPN. That will work with a VPN client provided by your employer, which will be OpenVPN with a pre-installed bundle named after your organization. And when you double-click on it, you'll say, connect to my company. And what it's doing under the hood is programming the routing algorithm with a really, really precise rule. If the IP addresses matches the corporation's IP address space, through the VPN. Otherwise, if it's for the LAN or for anywhere else on planet Earth, straight out, nowhere near the VPN, please. It's a perfectly valid routing rule.
Okay. Sure.
So it's a really powerful tool. So that's why when you say a simple question like, oh, but a VPN removes me from the LAN, maybe at layer 4, definitely not at layer 1, impossible. And how it behaves at layer 4 depends on the configuration of the specific VPN app. So the real answer is it depends.
So I was wrong.
Yeah, but Adam pushed back, but then when you asked him to justify it, went, yeah, I can't explain it. And then you left it hanging.
So I was wrong, he was right, but neither of us knew why either position was right or wrong.
Exactly. Now, I've front-loaded this discussion with the difficult part. Everything in this show is easier from here. So a really easy question to answer is iCloud Private Relay. Well, now that we have words, I can tell you that iCloud Private Relay exists 100% at layer 4. And there's actually a really nice developer video from the year Apple released it. It's 15 minutes long and it has all the nerdy detail, but I'm going to save you the bother. The only thing it does is 3 things. All of your web browsing traffic coming from Safari is double encrypted so that no one can de-anonymize it using the HTTP version 3 protocol over a very fancy pants protocol called Quick, which is really efficient. Google invented it to do internet stuff faster. So it's HTTP traffic, which is encrypted. So it's HTTPS if you're going to get pernickety with me. But it is your web traffic with an extra layer of encryption being sent over the HTTP version 3 protocol. It does not cover non-HTTP stuff. So if it isn't from the web, it ain't going through that tunnel. The other thing that the Mac does when you turn on iCloud Private Relay is something very powerful that we have talked about because the protocol is called Oblivious DOH or ODO, which we joked about being like from Star Trek DS9.
Hang on, what does DOH stand for again?
DNS over HTTPS. So instead of sending out an utterly unencrypted DNS packet, you actually wrap the DNS question in an HTTP query. You talk to a you talk to a DNS server that actually pretends to be a web server, and you send it a web request asking it for a DNS question, and it answers your DNS question as a web reply. It uses HTTP to tell you what IP address matches what domain name instead of doing it over the DNS protocol, which means you have all the protections of HTTPS.
I'm sorry, I lost how we ended up talking HTTP. What caused that?
Okay, so DOH is a protocol for doing DNS over HTTPS. which means that all of the leakiness of DNS evaporates and gets protected by the security of HTTPS. So it means that all of your DNS queries are encrypted anonymously if you turn on iCloud Private Relay. That's very powerful.
Oh, okay. Hang on. So you're saying without iCloud Private Relay on, my DNS queries are unencrypted?
Yes.
But if I turn on iCloud Private Relay, that's when I get DOH DNS over HTTPS.
Yes.
Ah, got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's happening at the operating system level. So that has to be an operating system feature. So that's one of the things that iCloud Private Relay does. The last feature it offers is one of those things it's called opportunistic encryption. If you install a third-party app, and that third-party app uses Apple's API for making HTTP without an S queries, then macOS or iOS with iCloud Private Relay turned on will adversary in the middle, where the adversary is the good guy, so helper in the middle, I'm making this up as I go along, will basically behave like an attacker in the middle, and instead of spying on you, wrap it in HTTPS for you and encrypt it for you and shove it through iCloud Private Relay. So it gets anonymized as well. It's called opportunistic encryption. But only if the app uses Apple's APIs. If the app is Firefox, which has whole different APIs because it's a bunch of C code that's shared across all the operating systems, it does it in C instead of using Apple's APIs. It won't be affected by Apple's APIs. So it's a bonus, not something you can count on. So the two things you can count on are Safari will be anonymously encrypted. All of your DNS will be anonymously encrypted. So that is amazing. And then the third feature is, and we might make more of your stuff more secure, maybe, which is not bad.
Okay, so what we missed in talking about iCloud Private Relay, it is true that it encrypts our web traffic, but
that's it.
In our DNS queries, but it doesn't. But it doesn't take care of things like mail?
No, because that's all happening outside HTTPS. That's different protocols, so it just has nothing to do with it.
Okay, and it does protect apps if they followed Apple's APIs.
And only the HTTP part of the app. So if the app is talking a different protocol, add a picture as well.
Because it's already HTTPS, then it wouldn't be a problem. Or you're saying not even an HTTP request?
Right, it could be an IMAP request. It could be a Samba request doing Windows file sharing. It could be an infinity of things, right?
Okay. By the way, why didn't they call it attacker in the middle? Adversary in the middle is too many syllables. You just said attacker in the middle, and that was like that. Now I can remember the acronym because I can say it faster.
It's a word cybersecurity professionals love, adversaries. If you read the slides, they never talk about baddies or attackers. It's adversaries. Because it could be a government who are being a bit too spy happy. They're an adversary. But is it fair to call the Chinese government an attacker? Yeah, a bit political. Call them an adversary. Yeah. It's less political.
They're adversary to what I want.
Yeah, exactly. It's anyone who's contrary to my desires is an adversary. Whether that's malice or whether it's paternalism. Right, so call it adversary.
Okay. That was a little bit simpler to follow. Is there any other piece to this?
Yeah, so now we get back to me quibbling with Adam about DNS. So Adam very rightly said that because DNS is an old, icky protocol, anyone who manages to become an adversary in the middle can see your DNS queries, and they will see a UDP packet with zero encryption that says, please tell me the IP address for google.com, and they will see the answer coming back, and they will know that you were told that google.com is on whatever IP address it's on, which is obviously a privacy violation, right? If you go to some clinic for some embarrassing disease.com, even if you go over HTTPS, they will not be able to see which web page on someembarrassinghospital.com, but they will know you went to someembarrassinghospital.com, which leaks quite a lot of information. If you go to a church website, you're probably from that religion. If you go to a gay pride website, you're probably at the very least friendly to gay people. If you go to a trans activism website, the probability that you're non-binary in some way is significantly higher than random.
Higher. Right.
So there's data leaking through DNS, and that is to me already bad enough. And Adam says, yeah, it's not that. If you can live with that, it's okay. I minor quibble there. The problem is an unencrypted protocol with an adversary in the middle has an even worse problem. Not only can they see, if you edit an unencrypted packet, you won't create any sort of error. Your computer will believe the answer. So an adversary in the middle can redirect your traffic. If I lied to you over DNS, I can make you talk to whatever server I like. Because you asked...
Wait, but aren't I going to get that certificate error that says this isn't really myhospital.com?
You will for HTTPS traffic. And so at that stage, you're protected by not being the kind of human who clicks past warnings. But for Samba file share traffic, where you think you're asking something off your NAS, but you've actually just been sent somewhere completely different and sent the username and password for your NAS to some randomer because the Samba protocol is ick, right? You've just been lied to about where your NAS is, and so you've talked Samba instead of HTTPS. You've leaked a username and password. Maybe your mail server isn't doing TLS properly, so you're doing IMAP and with plain text usernames and passwords. Or maybe it's plain text access tokens, and what leaks out is an hour's worth of access to your email before the session expires. That's still an hour of getting to be you and resetting your password on lots of sites. So the fact that you can lie with DNS is dangerous. It means that you expose people to dialog boxes they may choose to ignore. Or worse still, if they're using even one unencrypted protocol, whatever they sent has leaked.
So that's a reason to have iCloud Private Relay on.
It is definitely a reason to have iCloud Private Relay on, which will protect you for all of your webby stuff. It's also a really good reason to have a VPN. Because if you're using a VPN, then all of that Samba stuff is going over the VPN. And NordVPN will always, it will tell your Mac or iPhone, doesn't matter what DNS server you thought you were using, you're using my secure DNS server now, which means that all of your DNS traffic on the commercial VPN apps goes straight through the VPN. And so the adversary in the middle loses all the DNS.
Okay, I don't want you to answer this, but the VPN that I've been choosing to use is Tailscale.
Oh, amazing.
So
amazing.
But I'm out and about. I turn on Tailscale. I keep it on all the time anyway, but I can set one of the devices on my LAN to be an exit node.
Yeah.
So my traffic goes into my house and then turns around and goes back out. So am I on the LAN?
Yes, very much so, because Tailscale's magic trick is to teleport you into your LAN so that you can do all of your home stuff from anywhere. And that's not a bug. That's a feature.
That is the feature.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's sort of a twist your brain inside out problem as we're back inside the LAN again.
Yeah.
So do you see this DNS packets being not just a privacy risk, but enabling adversary in the middle attacks as a large threat vector for regular folks?
You see, none of these things at the moment. So if I have an unlocked door and I live up the Rocky Mountains, the theoretical risk is identical to an unlocked door in New York City. But in reality, if I lived up the Rockies, I'd leave my door open. I wouldn't do it on Fifth Avenue. So for most people, I am not seeing widespread AITMs happening on the LAN. I'm just not seeing it. So I think for normal folk who are not going to a dangerous place or who are not important people, be that a scientist or a business person or a campaigner or a government person, I don't. Right. I don't. Right. There we go. That's the answer. Yeah. I don't.
Okay. So that doesn't mean don't use a VP, or does that mean you don't think people need it? The bottom line, do people, regular folk, non-activists, non-government officials, non-CEOs, would you say you've got to run or you really should run a VPN?
No, unless you're going to a place like China or something and you're doing something really weird.
Okay, so I was in Japan struggling with my VPN,
I wouldn't have.
not letting me do some things.
I would
Not a big worry.
No. What I would do, though, is turn on iCloud Private Relay so that all your DNS is protected.
Yeah, and do you keep iCloud Private Relay on at home?
Yes, because it's easier.
Okay.
You just turn the toggle and walk away.
I remember turning it on at one time, but I'm pretty sure I get confused on there's one of the things messes up mail and makes none of your attachments show. And it came out at the same time as iCloud Private Relay, and I can never remember which one it was.
Well, I can tell you that iCloud Private Relay is fine to turn on, except when Apple have a server outage, and then iCloud Private, just like if your VPN provider goes down, your internet is fine, but if you're using the VPN, all of a sudden you lose your internet connection because the VPN just went down. Well, if you're using iCloud Private Relay and their servers go down, your DNS is gone. But then you go in and you turn it off, and it goes, hey, how about I just turn it back on tomorrow? And I go, sure, Apple.
Now, that's not advanced data protection. That's
No.
a whole nother thing,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, don't go there. That does all sorts of things.
Okay. So I can't find iCloud Private Relay. Is
in
that in
iCloud settings.
Safari?
No, it's in iCloud settings.
It's in iCloud
Because it's
settings.
an iCloud feature.
It's just called Private Relay once you're in iCloud. There it is.
Yes. Sorry, of course it is, right?
All right. I hope it's okay. I turned it on right while I was talking to you. Did I
absolutely
lose you?
safe, Alison. I have it on all the time.
Okay. All right.
And then
Very good to know.
I
So
have
I
one last
do
piece
want to
of
thank
thing.
Adam for saying all of this.
Absolutely.
Because I was unaware at all. This is great.
Now, I have one more thing to add. So there's a reason I'm much more blasé about not running with a VPN these days. And that's because modern Wi-Fi that you buy, not as a home user, but let's say that you're running a coffee shop and you pay someone to install Wi-Fi. They're not going down to the local, I don't know what, Curry's here in Ireland, whatever store sells a router to a home person. I don't know where you go. Circuit City, I don't know.
Best Buy.
Best Buy, thank you. They're not going down to Best
Amazon.
Buy and picking up a regular Asus router, right? They're installing an enterprise-grade Wi-Fi solution. And for the last decade or so, enterprise-grade Wi-Fi has had a feature called client isolation, which means that the router will only allow you to talk to the router and the internet. It will not take a packet from you and send it to any other user on the Wi-Fi. Therefore,
So you're not on the LAN?
Therefore, you're actually not on the LAN because the router is acting like a switch, and it's as if everyone has a private LAN. The way it actually works, under the hood, you have a LAN with you. You're the only person in your LAN. Everyone on the Wi-Fi network has a different LAN, is what's actually happening.
So we just came full circle, Bart.
Yes,
I'm
we
right.
did.
You're not on the LAN.
If it's enterprise grade Wi-Fi with client isolation turned on, and 90% of stuff in Starbucks, because they just contract that out. Like, there's a provider for Starbucks Wi-Fi for the whole of America, probably. They're not using over-the-counter stuff. They're using modern Wi-Fi equipment. They have client isolation because it saves them so much cleanup in aisle 4. The reason people turn it on isn't because they're trying to protect you. They're trying to protect themselves from you getting hacked and you getting all stroppy with them.
Okay. That's really interesting. But I wonder, if we stay at a little hotel in a terrible town. It's a terrible hotel. There was a cat in the hallway, a feral cat that walked into our rooms. It's a nasty little hotel, but it's near some family we love. The chances that their Wi-Fi has client isolation?
I can give you a test that will give you 90% confidence of a yes/no answer. Does the Wi-Fi work by a captive portal page where it asks me to give my room number, or does the Wi-Fi work by a post-it note hanging up in reception? If it's a post-it note with a shared password, it's home Wi-Fi. So if you have a coffee shop where the Wi-Fi password is thumbtacked to the whiteboard or something, that's home Wi-Fi. If it works any other way, it's not.
I don't know if that's a good distinction. So it's not a post-it note, but when you walk into the United Club at Los Angeles International Airport or the American Fancy Pants Club, they have a little card you get that tells you the password.
Sorry, that's not
I'm
enterprise
pretty
Wi-Fi.
sure.
That is the old-fashioned way. They are not doing it the modern way. That is shocking.
Really?
Yes. If there is a password, it can't be the modern the modern networking, because it doesn't work with a pre-shared key. Those passwords are pre-shared keys. Unless it's username plus password, it's not enterprise Wi-Fi or a captive portal page.
No username. Well,
if it's no username, it's not. If it's just a password, if it's just a password that's the same for you and for Steve and for everyone,
yeah,
then
it's not enterprise.
It's not enterprise. If it gives you a landing page,
90%.
Yeah, if it gives you a landing page, that's not a password. That's a landing page. That's called a captive portal. That's an enterprise feature where they let you in without.
It does give me that. That is what it gives me, but I have to put that password in there.
But it's on a landing page. It's not like the normal Wi-Fi dialogue pops like when you visit your friend's house.
Correct.
Okay.
It is the interstitial. It is the captive portal.
Okay, perfect. That passes the test. If it's a captive portal, it's enterprise.
Okay, even though all I have to do is put in that dopey little password.
Yeah,
okay.
But it means that under the hood, it has those protocols like client isolation. They're choosing to use the captive portal to let you in, but that's the technology. It's using the fancy stuff. It's not a home router.
Okay. So we are not going to diagnose this right here, but just for completeness sake, on both of my Macs, when I turned on Private Relay, I got a pop-up that says, Private Relay unavailable. Software installed on this Mac is incompatible with Private Relay. And I'm not going to tell you which ones.
Oh, no, that's interesting. So you're running something I'm not running. That is very interesting. Okay.
And in system settings, it says, learn more. And it says, manage iCloud Private Relay for specific websites, networks, or says, it's just a web page. Maybe somewhere in here it's telling you that there's something. A third-party app such as a VPN or internet filtering software. I wonder if it's Tailscale.
Hypothetically, Tailscale may not want another app messing around with its DNS settings. Right? If you have two pieces of software trying to reconfigure DNS at the OS level, they may have a fight. Well, that is interesting.
Interesting.
I will leave it as a listener to the next listener to come in with a clarification on this, because I am so done explaining your last segment.
Well, this just in, it's not Tailscale. I turned off Tailscale and it still doesn't work. Unless it's just the existence of Tailscale.
It could just be
all
the
right,
existence.
we will leave that for the student.
Yes. Right. Into normal business. I have one action alert for you. There was a 0 day in Google Chrome. It was a nasty one because it was being used in the real world. So turn it off and turn it on again and it'll patch itself.
There we go.
And you will have to load all your tabs again. Maybe close a few hundred. Anyway. Worthy warnings. Oh, so much to talk about here. All Mac users, I need your attention for a moment. There has been a new type of attack that has been wreaking havoc to our friends on Windows. You go to a web page and it gives you a CAPTCHA and it says, to prove you're human, press the Control button plus the C button, then press the Windows key plus or, and then the Control button plus the V button and hit Enter, which in Windows world means copy whatever this evil web page, have just put into this text box here, open the run dialog and paste it, and execute whatever arbitrary command I just gave you. What you are doing...
How many people would do that?
Shockingly many. It is really popular because it works.
It's so complicated. That's
people are
shocking.
so used to CAPTCHAs being evil. They just go, oh God, this is
annoying?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, anyway.
Okay.
There's now a variant for the Mac where it will make you copy, open the terminal, paste, and hack yourself. With a bit of bash scripting. Just, So don't do that.
I cannot imagine doing that. I can't imagine going, wait, what? Not because of good spidey sense, just like, I don't care enough about this website to do that.
I agree with you, but can you honestly say that this won't be successful?
Well, I'm surprised that it is, but you've told me it is, so it must be.
Sorry to say it is.
But these are dodgy websites, right?
Yes, or ads, because it's JavaScript. So a dodgy ad could do it as well.
Oh, yuck. Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, just be aware.
Okay.
If you are one of those Mac users who already have your Spidey sense going and you're also a Safari user, I want you to be aware of another new technique that only works against Mac users on Safari because other browsers have nipped this in the bud, and I'm very, very, very hoping Apple are about to copy them. It is possible right now today for JavaScript to, without asking for your permission, take your current web browser window and turn it into one of those really annoying full screen windows. And when you do that in Safari, all the Safari buttons disappear, and the only thing you're left with is the web page, corner to corner. What the web pages are doing is putting a fake MAC address menu bar at the top of the web page, popping up a fake Apple permission prompt, asking you for your admin password to confirm something, and stealing your admin password.
So you said in the show notes, you said a red pill.
A red pill.
Is it a red pill because you've got the little red button?
Well, no. So in the Matrix, maybe it's a blue pill. The pill you take to go into the Matrix. You're now in a fake Mac.
Right. Oh, wow.
And if you're an advanced user and you notice that 1 second animation when you take a window and put it into that stupid mode, then you will notice it's happened. And if you bounce your mouse off the top of the screen, the real menu bar scrolls down. And if you bounce it off the bottom, the real dock scrolls up. So if you do either of those two things, the illusion will break. But the chance of success is not zero, which is why the attackers are doing it. And on other browsers,
I get asked,
you get asked.
I get asked for that stupid password all the time. So I'd be like going, oh, who's asking for it now? That's the one I would fall for.
Yeah. Sadly, that's why they're doing it. So the fix is very easy. Apple need to do what Chrome and all the other browsers do and not let JavaScript send you into full screen mode without your permission.
Yeah.
Nips it in the bud.
Okay.
So now, Android users, your turn. And this is just ick. Meta and Yandex have been found with their fingers in the cookie jar. It only works on Android because this is so bloody sneaky. 1/10 of me admires them, and 90% of me is really angry with them. If you install any of Meta's apps, so the green app for doing messaging, WhatsApp, the blue app, the real Facebook app, or whatever else comes from the Meta company.
Instagram, all that stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff. Or anything from Yandex, which means you're probably a Chinese user, and I don't know enough about Yandex to say what the name of the apps would be, but anything from either of those two companies on Android. Their native apps will set up a tiny little web server listening on localhost port some number of their choice. They have started to add JavaScript into their ads to connect to localhost on that port they made up and leak the identifier for advertising that the operating system does not give to the browser without the user's permission. They are hacking the user's permissions. The user has explicitly asked for privacy, and they are working around it by using their own app as a proxy server.
I lost the thread there again. So what's the effect of that? There's an ad for grape juice. What happens with that?
So it's worse than the specific ad. That ad got there by being sold in an ad auction. And in order to track you across the internet, what Yandex and Meta want is to know on every web page anywhere on planet Earth where they have an ad that it's you. And the only way to de-anonymize you is to get your advertiser ID out of your Android device, and you shouldn't be able to access that.
Okay.
But they have provided this dirty hack to have their own app intercept everything happening on the web on Android via localhost and steal it.
Okay.
And as soon as they got caught, they stopped. So that's how much they know it's wrong.
Oh, jeez. Literally hand in the cookie jar then. Great.
Okay. Asus router owners, your turn. There has been a bug The bug has been patched, so patchy, patchy, patch, patch. But if you were slow to patch, if it was hacked, the hack is permanent. You actually have to proactively kick the baddies out. Just updating the firmware will not fix it. There is a new SSH key in your router that will give a backdoor to the baddies forever if you don't explicitly remove it. You need to go into the admin bit and throw the key away.
Yikes.
Yeah. It's very rare for a permanent hack. Two more. Customers of T-Mobile in the United States, you have landed in a gray area. I do not believe there is any malice here by T-Mobile. I actually think they're trying to make your customer support better. What they've done is turned on screen recording within their app without telling you, so that if you run into a bug, their support people can see what you're doing and tell you what you're doing wrong.
Ooh.
If you opt into that, I could see that as a feature.
Yeah.
But opting you in without telling you, that's incompetence
it's automatic?
bordering on, yeah.
Yeah, no, you don't get to do that.
Yeah. And then the last...
So there's nothing we can do about it. That's just this is going to happen?
Oh, you can turn it off. So it is a toggle in the settings that you can turn off, but it defaulted to on and didn't tell you.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't think it's malicious. I think it's just incompetence, but, just so you know. And lastly, there is a company in the United States called Optima Tax Relief, which I believe, according to the internet, is very popular. And their job in life is to argue with the IRS on your behalf and resolve disputes. So they have, by the nature of their business, all of your really sensitive data. They've just suffered a nasty ransomware attack. They appear to have lost everything, but it's happened so recently they haven't told you yet because they don't know how bad it is. So if you're one of their customers, you need to watch their website for updates.
Okay.
That's it. That's all I'm going to say about it. Just, you have to watch now. Over to you. Okay, that's the icky bit done. Into some notable news. We have talked about Apple proactively making some opt-in features for better parental controls. My theory is Apple did that to try nip laws in the bud that would force them to really verify ages of everyone. That has not worked. Texas has passed a law saying that from the 1st of January 2026, every Texan using the App Store on Android or iOS will have to prove their age to Apple or Google, which means they can't be anonymous. Every child will have to have their account linked to a parent or guardian, which is what the law is really about.
The second part doesn't sound terrible, but the first part is less private than what they were doing, right?
Massively so, and you can't do the second part without also invading everyone's privacy. The only way to prove you're not a kid is to verify that you're an adult, and the only way to verify you're an adult is with some sort of state-issued ID.
Okay.
So by the back door, it's complete removed anonymity from all the app stores. There are First Amendment issues. It may or may not go to court, but as of it stands right now, this is what's going to happen on January 1st in Texas.
Yeah.
Now, you put me onto this next story because it is very interesting. The Irish Civil Liberties Council have won the right to take a class action lawsuit against Microsoft in Ireland over how Bing sells ads, because Bing, like Google, is an ad broker, or Microsoft, like Google, is an ad broker. And people have been worried for some time that the GDPR is not compatible with how ads are sold, because they build a profile on you that contains all sorts of information and then sell it without your permission, which is a bit anti-privacy and seems to break the GDPR. And people have been really cranky that the responsible authority is the Irish Data Protection Commissioner, because that's where all of these companies have their EU headquarters. And the Irish Data Protection Commissioner has done a giant big pile of nothing about this. And everyone's pet theory is that it's because the Irish government want to get all the big companies here, and they've put pressure on the data protection commissioners to be, and the actual word used by government ministers is light touch, in their regulation of technology. Light touch is a euphemism for don't enforce the law, in my opinion, but that is my opinion. It has not been legal in Ireland to do a class action for this because under Irish law, it should be the Data Protection Commissioner doing this. So the Civil Liberties Council sued for the right to sue Microsoft directly, and they have won the right to sue Microsoft directly. So Microsoft haven't been found to have done anything wrong yet, but they've bypassed the data protection commissioners, and this is now going to go to a real trial where Microsoft have to prove they're not breaking the GDPR. And nothing Microsoft is doing is different to what Google is doing. So if Microsoft are found guilty, the entire industry is in trouble. Okay.
That's interesting.
Switching to the good news, and this is good news already, but switching more to the good news, Vodafone in Germany has had to pay 51 million for being incompetent at cybersecurity. This is great news because whenever a CSO, Chief Information Security Officer, asks for money, they can say, yes, you should give me 100,000 to fix this because otherwise it could cost you 51 million. See? So this is important. Apple have released their report on government data requests for 2024. It is mostly uninteresting. You're welcome to read it. It's cool and all. A nugget that is interesting is that the number of requests to send your push notifications to the government have gone up, and the number of times Apple have complied has gone down. So Apple seem to be saying, no subpoena, no push requests. Seems good to me. So it's nice to see Apple pushing back on our behalf. Thank you, Apple. Completely in the good news column, Microsoft has started a free trial, not a free trial. They have started a trial of a new feature that will allow software vendors to make use of the entire Windows software update process to update third-party apps. So every company that has this massive process in place to handle Windows updates can just get like any app that opts in for free. All of that infrastructure could be used to fix bugs in Firefox or Chrome or whatever else chooses to opt into this. So I really hope this takes off, and then lots more Windows people will be lots more patched and lots more secure.
Nice.
And then finally, Microsoft are giving away free cybersecurity services to European governments. So I just can't think of anything but yay, thanks.
Yeah.
Now, interesting insights. This is one for people who want to go read and then decide how icked out they are. Politico have an article explaining why it looks like end-to-end encryption is about to come under a massive attack in Europe. It seems like everyone's lining up for a fight over the right to ban encryption. I don't look forward to this.
No.
Details in show
Not
notes.
at all.
And now we shall cleanse our palates.
Well, I think I get to start this one, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is came from my daughter Lindsay had this video played during a security meeting at her office, and it's a fantastic. The YouTuber that did this has a fabulous delivery. They're called 2-minute papers, and they read a paper and then they explain it to you in 2 minutes. And it's a video explaining how OpenAI worked on building a little game for the AI to pit against each other. It's a hide and seek game.
Huh.
And what the AI does to beat the game is really, really interesting. They basically cheat. They find ways to get around it, and watching the evolution of how they do it. And the animation's fantastic in this. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Lindsay enjoyed it thoroughly. I posted it to Slack, and everybody was loving it. And then Sandy goes, yeah, and it's 5 years old.
Wow.
That link was from 5 years ago, so what could it do now?
That is fascinatingly
It's still a really fun
terrifying.
video, though.
Fascinatingly terrifying? Terrifyingly fascinating? One of those.
Yeah. It's still super fun to watch because it's these little AI characters attacking each other, trying to play hide and seek. Two characters are hiding from the other two characters, and they have to build this little world to get around each other. It's very simplistic, but it's really fun to watch. So it's still worth listening to and learning from how these things do what they do. But it is 5 years old, which is funny.
The fundamental problem there is alignment. That's the fancy pants word. Basically, the AI just tries to solve the problem you give it. And if you don't tell it to stick to the rules, why would it? That's not what you asked me to do.
Right. Well, that's what I love.
Yeah, and that's still true today. That has not aged. Cool. I'm going to watch that. Thank you. I have 2 podcast suggestions for you. And I noticed I used the wrong emoji for my second story. I have no idea why I have an American flag instead of a headphone icon for that second one, because they're both podcast episodes. So the first one is a surprisingly casual and frank conversation with the head of open source at Microsoft, who actually says in the interview, yeah, if I had my way, we'd open source Windows. Yeah, it might take me a decade or 2, but that's what I want.
Wow.
Okay.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he talks in great detail about the details of how the Windows subsystem for Linux works, which we talked about a bit last time because they just open sourced that completely. Fascinating how that works. I thought it was cool. I was wrong. It's really, really, really cool. So there we go.
Cool.
And then the last one just made me think of, well, frankly, you, Alison, and of this community. You go to CSUN every year and you tell us these amazing stories about technology solving very real problems for people who are, in some way having an issue interacting with the world, right? They are temporarily or permanently differently abled for some reason. Mm-hmm. Well, the podcast 99PI has been one I love for ages, and one of their producers had
99PI?
99% Invisible. It is Roman Mars's podcast. It is about anything that is designed, which is anything. And one of their producers had a freak accident and lost the use of an arm. Just wasn't something they were expecting. It was just a really freak accident. And they are designers, and so they have spent the last year designing their life so that being one-armed is not a problem. And the technology, like how do you lace up your shoes by yourself? How do you type on a keyboard? They solve these problems with design, and it is a fascinating conversation about how technology lets people live easier lives when the universe throws them a dodgy curve.
That sounds really interesting. Yeah, definitely will want to check that out.
Okay.
Well, does that bring us to the end of a mammoth security bits? But we got, this is something I really wanted to learn about. So I think the whole VPN that was just a separate conversation. We're just at a normal size.
I think what we did was we had a short security bits and a normal chit chat across the pond, and we branded it security bits.
There you go.
Anyway, folks.
All right. Thanks for that, but I really appreciate that. I understand a lot more about it now.
Oh, yay. Okay. Well, folks, you know what you should do. You should stay patched so you stay secure.
That part on the VPN was such a good segment. I took that and I've cut just that piece out, and it's going to be coming out tomorrow probably as a standalone Chit Chat Across the Pond. And I did that because there's Chit Chat Across the Pond people that don't listen to the NosillaCast, and they will have heard Adam's discussion, and I wanted them to be able to hear Bart's answer to everything that Adam and I talked about. So I carved it out and I made it a separate standalone one. It also might be good if you want to tell somebody what Bart said, you can just say, go to this link and you can listen to the whole thing instead of having to say, okay, go to the NosillaCast and you got to find the chapter and blah, blah, blah. You're going to be able to just go, here's Chit Chat Across the Pond. Anyway, I think I'll come out with that tomorrow. I've got it all ready to go. But that is going to wind us up for this week. Did you know you can email me at allison@podfeet.com anytime you like? If you have a question or a suggestion, just send it on over. Remember, everything good starts with podfeet.com. You can follow me on Mastodon at podfeet.com/Mastodon. If you want to listen to the podcast on YouTube, you can go to podfeet.com/YouTube. If you want to join the conversation, you can join our Slack community at podfeet.com/Slack, where you can talk to me and all of the other lovely NosillaCastaways. You can support the show at podfeet.com/Patreon, or with a one-time donation at podfeet.com/donate, or through podfeet.com/PayPal. You can even shop for a cool new red NosillaCast shirt at podfeet.com/shop. And if you want to join the fun in the live show, head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic NosillaCastaways. Don't forget to go to podfeet.com/chat tomorrow, Monday the 9th, for WWDC at 10 a.m. at podfeet.com/chat. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed.